All right, gang, let's get started. Amy, can you also see the revisions to Ohio drainage law slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, gang, we're going to go through the revisions to Ohio drainage law for petition ditches for soil and water districts. I don't have these things memorized. I'm sure some of you have already probably been into them a little bit more. I'm going to try to highlight some of the major changes, and I think that this will process will be better for soil and water districts. It'll be a little easier on the boards and the district staff, I hope. So we'll find out soon, I guess. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about the task force and then the review those chapters for 940. So we started this whole process back in 2013, and it was started by the County Commissioners Association at the request of I believe, Defiance County and several other counties, just because they was having troubles with the process and their prosecutors and things along those lines. So we went through the process, and we not only looked at changing 1515, which was where it was at the time under ODNR, but we also looked at changing 6131, which is the county petition process through the County Engineers Association or county engineers. And then we also looked at changing 6135 and 6137. So this was a complete rule rewrite with the petition ditch laws at soil and water districts and the county engineers level. What the history of the task force? We started back in 2013. Had a survey sent out to districts, engineers, auditors, landowners, attorneys, try to identify what problems were out there. We took that survey and reviewed them and compiled a report of the issues. And we try to look at technology out of the box. You know, we've had these ditch laws on the books for a very long time, but technology has changed a bunch since they were first created. Then we set up groups from those reports and started working on making changes. And we soon realized that we wanted to mirror the process between 940 and 6131 as much as possible, so that it was seamless and it made sense both to the auditors and all those, the prosecutors and the engineers that were working on it. That they didn't really matter which process they were in; they knew the steps. We had an attorney review and clean up the process back in 2015. They were submitted to the Agricultural Law Committee, and Peggy Kirkall with OSU and Amy Millam, they worked a lot to clean these things up and get them into the law that is currently out there for us. Chapter revisions. We looked at the issues that were out there. We wanted to reflect current practices, and we wanted to align those two. Again, 940 and 6131. We wanted to be reorganize the chapter so it was more logical, so you could kind of follow along. You weren't skipping back and forth in the process. I don't know if you remember in 1515, you were jumping back from 1515.21 back to 17 or whatever. It didn't really make sense. So we wanted to improve the readability and clean up things, clean up the terminology and make it easier for folks to follow it. So we're going to jump in here to 940 and some of those changes. If I guess I should have said this up front. If you have questions, feel free to put it in a chat box, and Justin will get it to me, and we'll stop and we'll go through those things. I know we have several committee members that are probably on this, and they might be able to answer it if I'm not able to. So in this, major changes, the time frames and deadlines have drastically changed from the old 1515. There's also a procedure to deal with amendments. There's a time restriction on that. There's a method for conducting the view. The second hearing has changed to who's conducting it or who's holding it. We've specified more clearly what the sod and seeded strip specs are, and we also clarified who the lead county is in these projects. Some definitions. So this is right in the beginning of 940. We always start out with definitions. And the first one is lead county. So the lead county is a county in which the majority of the initial length of the proposed improvement would exist. And you might say, well, what's the initial length? Well, because you can add amendments, so the length could increase, but whatever county has the majority of the initial length of the project, not the watershed, the initial length of the project is the lead county. It also clarifies the prosecuting attorney. The prosecuting attorney is in the lead county is the legal advisor for the joint project. And then we added a definition of day. Day means a calendar day. Okay. I tried to create a little step-by-step process, and I hope they sent this back out in, I don't know, February or something along those lines. Hopefully, if you've received it from your program specialist, if you're working on these kind of projects. If you haven't, let me know and we'll send it out to you. I'm not saying this is all inclusive, but I tried to highlight the major steps in the process. So if you want this and you haven't received it, let me know or let your program specialist know, and we'll get it out to you. I know you can't read this, but it is out there in a Word document. Okay, so the process. A board of supervisors must accept or reject a petition at the next scheduled meeting or within 60 days of formation acceptance of a joint board. Past, it used to say upon receipt of a petition. So right now, it gives us a little more leeway that if they come in the day after a board meeting, they're supposed to approve it at the next board meeting or reject it. So there's a little clarification as to when that is. It's not necessarily set up for days. If the board accepts a petition, the board must set a date for the view not less than 30 nor more than 90 days after petition is accepted. So after they accept it at the board meeting, they're going to set a view for not less than 30, but no more than 90 days after that petition is accepted. The past used to say 25 to 90 days upon receipt. A little bit of the joint board, and I hope we clarified this better in the law this time around, but the joint board, upon formation of a joint board of supervisors, elected officials in the lead county shall serve as administration for the joint board. It's in 940.19, move to follow 940.34. In this process now, a landowner may file an amendment to the original petition that expands the length of the proposed improvement, but the amendment does not expand the area or the watershed of that improvement. So if a landowner comes in and they want to extend it up into the watershed, they want to add a lateral, or they want to increase the length of the project, it can't go downstream from the end of the initial petition. That would be a new petition. They do this so that you don't have to keep going back and recreating a view for that process by extending it downstream, if that makes sense. The producer or the landowner has no more than 21 days after the date of the view to file this amendment. So after that point, that project cannot extend or add any more laterals or length to that project. So we tried to clarify it, but give producers an opportunity to file an amendment. The view shall be not less than 30 nor 90 days after accepting the petition. The first hearing shall not be less than 30 nor more than 90 days after the view. I think if you remember in the past, a lot of times you do the view and the first hearing on the same day. That's no longer the case. You have to separate the two at least 30 days. And that allows for that amendments process to occur. So you can have the view and they can file an amendment, but it gives a chance to have all the amendments in before that first hearing. Now you can send out information to these producers of the notice of the view and the first hearing in the same grouping or in the same mailing. What must be included in there is the date and location of the view and the first hearing. You need to have a description of that proposed improvement. You need to have notice in there that landowner may file an amendment 21 days after the view. So you probably would need to put a little description in there and how they can do that. Notice the landowner may comment on the proposed improvements, so they can send in written comments and then an address for where they can send in those written comments. Okay, the view. We've added some language in here to change. Before, I don't know if you remember, in the view, it used to say that you had to walk the line of the project, and if you followed that strictly by the language, that meant you were forced to kind of walk the entire length of that project to view it. The board of supervisors were. Well, a lot of folks were trying to do that with PowerPoints. Well, this language should clear that up. So it allows the board to use methods and means that the board supervisor determines will adequately inform those attending the view about the proposed improvement, location, and drainage issues. So you could do it with a video from a drone. You could do it live from a drone. You could do it with a PowerPoint. You could do it with slides. However you wanted to do that. But there is language in there. So if a landowner really wants you to see a section or a concern along that project, they could request that you go to that site and look at it. So they could request to reconvene at the site and go look at that issue. Okay. The preliminary report, you don't have to present this at the view. Okay. This is something that you're going to present at the first hearing, but in the past we had to come up with a cost of construction. Well, you still have a cost in there, but it's an estimated cost. We're not creating plans. We're going to put comments of feasibility in there. Statement from the board is whether they feel the benefits will exceed the cost. List all factors identified by the board, favorable, unfavorable for the project, any alternative proposals. Review and approved by an engineer, whether that be NRCS, ODA, could be a county engineer, things along those lines. This report can begin after acceptance of the petition. So you can get started on this preliminary report after the board has accepted that petition. You can start working on this and coming up with whether or not you're going to have tile main or an open ditch and those types of concerns. So we're going through the process. We accepted petition. We've had our first view. Any amendments have come in, should have already been in, and we're going to have the first hearing. At that first hearing, we're going to present this preliminary report. After the preliminary report's presented, we're going to hear comments or evidence for and against the project from the landowners. Hearing can be recessed and continued of subsequent days to consider additional information or hear all the landowners with comment on the project. So if there's a lot of comments, you can reconvene on another day to continue that first hearing. So this is new language. So in the past, we were pretty much voting to proceed with a project at this point to go ahead once we were, all those to build it, kind of how it was written, and we wanted to give a little more option here. So at the conclusion of this, and make it a little easier on the Board of Supervisors, at the conclusion of this first hearing, the Board of Supervisors shall vote to determine whether to proceed with project survey and design or to dismiss the petition. Take in consideration the petition, the preliminary report, and comments on the proposed improvement. So at this point, the supervisors are only voting to proceed with the design and survey, just based on the information taken in from the meeting. Hopefully that makes it a little easier on the supervisors. They're not voting to proceed with the project without actually having a complete final design and all the comments and estimated assessments to producers. Okay, so if they voted to proceed with the design and survey, the district or whoever's going to be working on these plans is going to prepare a set of plans that include specs for construction improvement, dimensions of any temporary easements for construction. For ditch projects shall include leveling of spoil, erosion, and sediment control. Seeding final top of bank shall be minimum of 10 feet and a maximum of 15 feet. So this is a change. It's called out in there. It's a minimum of 10 feet, a maximum of 15 feet. There's going to be still analysis of any gates or existing fences that might be taken out and whether they need to be installed or maintained on this project. We don't run into this a lot, but sometimes it is out there. After survey plans and specs are complete, the board shall prepare a schedule of damages to be included in the estimate. Estimate of cost of construction shall include construction costs to meet specs, the schedule of damages, any costs incurred in investigations, consulting services, notifications, and other incidental costs. So they kind of left us in there for putting in those costs for mailings. If you had to send out soils for lab work and there was a cost associated with that. If you had to get a consulting engineering company in there to help out with that, you could include that into your estimated cost for the project. Okay, schedule estimated assessment. So you've got your plans, you got your specs, you got your damages. You're going to board or supervisor designees shall prepare estimated assessments. Currently, it says the Board of County Commissioners. I know that a lot of districts were doing those estimated assessments, but now it's coming back to the Board of Supervisors or their designee. I'm not saying you can't work with the county engineer or you can't work with the county commissioners to make sure that it's all on board, but you can include that. I want to step back just a quick step in who's invited to the view and the hearing. It is recommended, or it is requested that you invite the Board of Commissioners, the county engineer, and any other folks that may have an interest in this project down the road. It doesn't say they have to be there, but it does tell you that you should invite those folks to come so that they're informed of this project as it's moving forward. Okay. Again, solder seated strip, you can find this in 940.26. Current law says 4 to 15 feet. Basically now it says no fewer than 10 feet for that sodded strip. That sodded strip shall be compensated by removal from taxable valuation of the property. Current law, only those in excess of 4 feet are removed.
So on that one, Mark, we did have a question.
Okay.
Is the berm required to be maintained as originally seeded, and also who polices that berm to be maintained?
So yes, it is required to be seeded and maintained, and it would fall onto the whoever's doing ditch maintenance. So if that's the county engineer or the soil and water districts, that minimum 10-foot berm needs to be maintained. And if someone was to rip it out, you could assess them back the cost to reseed it. Okay, hopefully that answers that question. If not, put one back out there, Justin. Okay. The schedule of estimated assessments. What needs to be on that? Incorporate the following factors in these assessments. We got the acreage of the parcel, volume of water produced by a parcel, remoteness of the parcel to the improvement, percentage of the improvement being used by that parcel. Work determined to benefit that particular parcel only and not the remainder of the parcels in the watershed. Soils, county auditor's land value or current agricultural use value if applicable. Existing drainage infrastructure may be incorporated into the improvement and associated cost savings, and any other factors pertinent to the particular petition and watershed. And then any benefits as defined in section 6131.01 of the revised code. So I'm not saying we're changing how you're doing the estimated assessments necessarily. It's just giving you hopefully a little clear guidance of the items that could be included in that. And we tried again, match 6131. So you've gone through, we've had our view, you had your first hearing, you've gone through the design, the specs, you got your estimated assessments. The board or the soil and water district is going to submit the petition, the preliminary report, survey plans and specs, estimated construction costs, schedule damages, schedule of assessments, and any other information necessary to the Board of County Commissioners at this point. Okay, this is a complete new section, this second hearing. Remember in 1515, you really didn't have a second hearing. A lot of folks would have another hearing just so they could go back over with the landowners. But now we're having a second hearing and it's required, but the Soil and Water Board is not necessarily in charge of it. It's the Board of County Commissioners. So they're going to hold a second hearing upon the completion of survey design, cost estimate, and assessments. So at least 21 days prior, board shall give notice of second hearing, which shall include a date and location of the hearing, estimated assessment. So every landowner should have their estimated assessments, notice of right to comment, and can send notice by certified or regular mail. The commissioners shall present design plans, cost, and hear comments on proposed improvements and estimated assessments. So the commissioners could go through this, but I'm guessing they're going to ask that the district or whoever actually worked on the plans to go through the plans. And then at this point, they can hear comments from the landowners on this project. Now, what's good is that the landowners not only know what the design is, but they also know what it's going to cost them to do this. And so at this point, they can be commenting not only on design, but also on whether they think they can afford to do it. The commissioners may adjourn and continue the hearing to consider additional information, make changes to plans, or provide all landowners opportunity to comment. Okay, another new section, 40.31. So the commissioners shall vote to approve or dismiss the petition. They may, I'm spelling error, may approve if reasonably certain there is an existing law certain that the cost of the proposed improvement will be less than its benefits, the proposed improvement is necessary, the proposed improvement will be conducive to public welfare, the proposed improvement will improve water management development in the county in which the district is located to the advantage of lands located in it, and the proposed improvement will aid in lands in the area by promoting the economical, industrial, environmental, or social development of the area. So, at the conclusion of the hearing, the commissioners, county commissioners, shall vote to approve or dismiss the petition. Okay, so at this point, hearing exceptions to assessments. Commissioners determine assessments. Commissioners may hear exceptions to assessments individually or at one hearing. So after this second hearing, if the county votes to proceed with it, there's a process in there for hearing exceptions to the assessments. And so the commissioners may hear those exceptions either individually or at one hearing. Must notify each owner who has filed an exception of the day of the hearing at least 14 days prior. And if they amend assessments, must send notice of new assessments to all owners. Owners may appeal final estimate assessments to Court of Common Pleas. So this is just tried to lay it out a little smoother than it was in the past as to how they can appeal those assessments. This is again a new section. It was copied directly from 6131.25 to completely match this process. So there's no confusion again for the prosecutor, the Board of County Commissioners, or the engineers involved. The appeals, any affected owner may appeal the Court of Common Pleas within 21 days of the day the final order was issued. So again, at the order of the second hearing, the appeal may be taken from any order affecting a part of the improvement as well as any order affecting the entire improvement. Is the improvement necessary? Will the improvement be conducive to public welfare? Greater than the benefits conferred? Is the route, is this the best route? Are the assessments levied according to benefits? Is the award for compensation or damages just? Okay. 940 questions. Do we have any questions out there, or is this process make sense?
So there were a couple more questions. One on the berm again. Is the berm the 10-foot minimum width, meaning is that retroactive to past projects?
It is not retroactive to past projects. It's from current moving forward.
Okay. And then Another one just came in. How do these new laws affect current conservation works of improvement already in progress?
So if you're going to want to talk to your prosecutor, but in my mind, I don't know how that works. I would think that you could continue on, but depending on where you are in the project, you may be able to move over to the new law because this is what the current law is. So I would talk to your prosecutor, see where you're at in that process.
I think that was it for now, Mark.
Okay. I can go over.
Just
go ahead.
Got one more in. Can you petition for only a log jam removal?
Yes.
Easy peasy.
Improvement, drainage water improvement.
All right, I think we're good.
Okay. I think one of the biggest things is that I like now is that the Board of Supervisors, the process is clearly defined of what they're required to do, and they're not voting whether or not to actually assess the landowners. It's really up to the county commissioners to do it at that point, and the landowners get to see what their estimated assessments are before that final vote is approved by the county commissioners. So they not only know what the plans are, they also know what it's going to cost them. So, and then there's also that caveat in there for them to file an amendment to a project. So this can't just keep adding on to the project. They have a set defined period when to do it. The biggest thing is if a petition comes in and they want to go from road A to whatever 2 miles up, and then someone else says, well, I want to go into the next county, I actually want to go extend this so that increases the watershed. Well, that's not a valid amendment. They would actually have to file a new petition. Now you could dismiss that other petition at that point if you got so many folks in there that they actually want to extend it downstream and increase the watershed, if that makes sense. I'll go over a little bit of 6131. Again, we tried to match this quite a bit. I know this isn't a process used by soil and water districts, but you might get involved with some of them with the county engineers, and you can kind of see the similarities. They updated to names, to single county drainage improvement throughout the revised code. They added flexibility to determine the benefits of the project. They changed again some of the timeframes and deadlines. They tried to clarify the petition process. They clarified the definition and timeframe for filing an amendment. Again, they tried to match. So if you want an amendment and you want to increase the watershed or not increase the watershed, but add laterals or increase it going upstream, you could do that. Updating the bond amount to modern values. Clarifying the permanent file proceedings, clarifying what information notice of the view in the first hearing must contain, and updating the timeline. Again, we wanted to modernize the methods in conducting the view. So again, they could use a drone, they could use a video, they could use a PowerPoint, whatever was necessary. They improved the access to information in the chain of title, clarifying factors determining estimated assessments. And then again, modernizing appeals and reconciling with current law. Again, instead of, if you remember in 6131, used to say ditch, it now says drainage improvement throughout the code. They added flexibility to determine the benefits of the project there, and this is the factors that they could now use to determine those benefits. They formalized a pre-filing meeting between the petitioner and county engineer, adding flexibility what considered an improvement by adding a clause which may include but is not limited to in 6131. It used to say particularly just a ditch. So now we could do, you could theoretically do a detention or retention basin or tile mains and all those things. It's clearly included in the law now. Oops, sorry. Clarifying the definition of that amendment. Again, it gives it the exactly 21 days after the view, so they can expand the length of that. If they, again, want to expand that area so it expands the watershed, it becomes a new petition. And we do this so that that process doesn't have to start over. So you don't have to restart the view again. So it just goes from that point on. They've revised the bond amount to be filed with the petition, revised it to $1,500 plus a sum of $5 for each parcel of land in excess of 200 parcels. Current law is $500 plus a sum of $2 for each parcel and land in excess of 200 parcels. So you can see that amount for filing a petition has gone up, that bond. They did this to clarify how the records of proceedings are filed and recorded. It didn't really match as to how the county supervisor or county engineers and commissioners were filing their records. Their view, clarifying the view in the first hearing must contain the updating timeline, define days, again, it's calendar days. It's not work days, it's calendar days. View timeline not fewer than 30 nor more than 120 days after the date at which the petition was filed with the clerk. Current law is not fewer than 25 nor more than 90. So it gives them a little bit longer, but it also clearly defines when it must occur. I'm not going to read all these things. If you got a specific question, holler out. Again, the owners are notified by the mail, and it talks in there about how they can file an amendment to that petition. The view, we modernize this, so hopefully there's no more lawsuits against about how you actually conducted that view, because it should leave it open enough to the technology so that you can see it. But a landowner can ask you to go see a specific area if he wants to. They clarified the first hearing a little bit, defines the logical progression for conducting the hearing for improved readability of the section. They have a dismissal of the petition, appeal. Clarifies that if dismissed, a bond will be used to pay costs. The remaining funds returned to the petitioner. Chain of title, I'm not going to go through this, but it was put in there for 6137 because we wanted to make it more clear for whenever land was transferred from one owner to the next, that it was a little easier to find that information, that there was a easement, a drainage easement on that project. This right here should look the same on the estimated assessments as 940, so that it was, again, we were using the same process for determining assessments or schedule of assessments and damages. The assessments about how they're to be mailed out. An owner may file an exception to the engineer's schedule assessments or a claim of damages for compensation not less than 5 calendar days before the date of the final hearing. So here, this process is a little different. They could appeal after the board of or county commissioners voted. Here, they need to file 5 days before the date of the final hearing if they're have an exception to the assessments. Here they try to modernize the appeals and reconciling with current law. Yeah, I'm not going to go through each of these sections here. Okay, I'm just going to jump over to this is the major changes for the Lee County for the county engineers process. I want to jump over into 6137. We wanted to clarify the roles and responsibilities for single versus joint projects on ditch maintenance. Increase the maximum for repair of an improvement, and then the date and deadline changes. Maintenance assessment process. County engineer makes inspection by the 1st of July and reports estimate. That was moved from 6137.06. Commissioners determine maintenance assessments which shall be based upon a percentage of the permanent maintenance base. Commissioners direct auditor place on duplicate on or before second Monday of September. Auditor places into fund if for a joint project, auditor twice annually transfers to lead county auditor. Drainage repairs. Commissioners may approve work at a cost not to exceed $24,000. Current is $4,000, so this is a pretty big jump. Commissioners may approve that cost. May give not more than 10 semi-annual installments for the owners to pay repair assessments. Current is 4 installments, so we can spread out this semi-annual payments for those repairs. Engineer shall inventory drainage repair and maintenance equipment on the second Monday or January. Current date is first day of June. County engineers wanted this to match their calendars, I guess. So that's why that change occurred. Reduction in maintenance assessments. Clerk of County Commissioners shall file with the county auditor at least a list of owners granted a reduction in maintenance assessments for the current year. Current is to file by the 1st day of July for any owner granted 50% reduction. Board of Commissioners may approve the permanent maintenance base prepared by a county engineer as opposed to the estimate of the construction cost in lieu of the original cost and improvement. If approved, the total estimated cost of improvement shall be the permanent maintenance base used to calculate the maintenance fund assessments. The approved estimate of construction total cost shall serve as a permanent maintenance base until such time as it is revised. So they give it in there that you can revise that permanent maintenance base. New section. In case of open ditch log jam removal projects where a 20-foot clear easement is not created adjacent to the bank, a 25-foot easement may be created adjacent to the wooded riparian corridor for maintenance access. So it was kind of hard for the maintenance easement to only be 25 feet from the top of bank where you were working on a project that was log jam only. So now it allows them to create that 25-foot clear easement outside of that wooded corridor so they could pull those logs out of there. Hopefully that makes some sense. Okay. That was a lot of information. I encourage you to read it and go through it, work with your prosecutors. Again, I think this will be better. I know we had a lot of involvement from a lot of different county engineers, county commissioners, county soil and water boards, supervisors, county technicians. Myself was involved with that. I think it's a better process. It's a little more clarified. Joint county project, it's clearly defined in there. Go read that section. If it's not, yell at me because I was the one that helped write that, I guess. So any other questions?
There was one more that popped up in the meantime.
Okay.
Our Soil and Water Conservation District technicians with appropriate NRCS job approval authority able to sign the preliminary report. You stated that that report needs to be approved by an engineer.
I'm going to have to go look at the law. I guess preliminary reports, if you have a job approval for it, I would think it's okay, but I need to actually read what the law states in there. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay.
Do you know who it is so I can get back to him?
It's Defiant Soil and Water Conservation.
Okay.
Got another one that popped in here. Is anyone else using a reduction in maintenance assessment process for drainage maintenance? I'm trying to implement it and looking for advice. Sounds like Greg's just looking for advice. So.
All right. So if anybody's out there is working on that, if you could reach to Greg in Hancock County on reductions, that would be great.
Aside from that, I don't see anything else. If anyone else has a question and you'd prefer to ask it via voice, go ahead and unmute yourself. You can do that, or you can still type in the chat box. This recording will be posted in the same YouTube webpage where all of our TDP webinars are located. So you should look for that in the next couple weeks. And then there was one at the very beginning, Mark. If they would like a copy of these slides, they can just send an email to you and you'll send them a copy. Is that correct?
Yep. Just send me an email. I'll send you a copy.
Okay. Well, we'll wait a couple seconds for any more questions to come in, and otherwise we might end this webinar here pretty soon.
And hopefully, gang, this is the last time we have to do one of these type of meetings. We can actually do it in person next time. So
that's the hope. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything else coming in. So with that, I guess we'll end the presentation. If you've got any questions, go ahead and email them straight to Mark, and he can take care of them as best he can. Like he said, hopefully this is the last one, and hopefully sometime later this year we can see some of you in person. So with that, we'll end the webinar, and thank you for attending.